from the lush hills of Green Hill to underwater Funtown, how do all the levels rank between each other, or how would I rank them since I'm sort of a classic Sonic kind of guy? I'm going to be ranking the Sonic 1 stages from worst to best. Keep in mind this is my ranking. I try to keep in mind first-time Sonic players and avid ones alike, since I had a harder time when I was younger and now I have an easier time. Some of the factors that impact the ranking of the stages are the difficulty of the stage and or the pure annoyance of the stage, bullshit traps and tricks, how in line with Sonic it is. In other words, do they have sections where you go fast and have fun versus sections where you have to wait and go extremely slow in a game about going really fast? On top of if the zone is really boring to play and feels like you're running in quicksand, and how unfair the experience feels for new players and experienced ones alike. One last thing, I won't be including the final stage or the special stages as a whole until the end, where I'll show them where I put them on the list since they are their own stages and in the level select. I just don't think it's fair to knock a level down just because it's final zone and it's the final boss, and it's not the hardest thing in the world and there's no instant death spike traps, which is why I'm going to throw them in at the end just for fun. So with that out of the way, let's get to the most dog shit level in the game. You all knew this was coming. Everyone and their grandma knows this is coming. The worst level goes to Labyrinth Zone. At no point are you allowed to go fast. If you get even slightly impatient, you're gonna get hit. On top of being underwater, which makes you move extra slow, and you have to stop for air. This zone is the anti-Sonic zone, and you have to play through 4 fucking acts. The standard 3 plus Scrap Brain Zone Act 3. There is a glitch where if you get hit and land on spikes or something similar, you just die, because you don't get the invincibility. This can happen several times in this zone. Again, you get punished for going fast it seems, so you always fall into something. These spear things can kiss my ass. They hurt you when retracted, and make you have to take it slow, and sometimes wait, or else dink, haha, you got shanked, bitch. There's plenty of dickish traps, and most players will constantly get hit. Being an avid classic Sonic player, I still get hit a lot and fall for the insta-death traps. Speaking of which, when you get an air bubble, Sonic's physics have an acid trip and go bonkers. So if you try to jump over these spikes after getting air, yeah, your speed is so god-awful you die instantly. There is also waiting and a puzzle or two. Since when did Sonic, a game about speed, become a difficult underwater platform and puzzle adventure? Now the start of Act 3, the water slide. Sure, it seems fun, but as a kid, I had barely any clue what to do for a minute or so. You have to jump at the right time to get to a switch. But if you're holding a direction...
Denied!
For some people, it goes a little too fast to jump at the right time, and you end up getting confused as to how you're getting cucked out of your jump. Then fuck, I fell back in. While it's not bullshit, it's kinda silly, especially for newer or less experienced players. At least if you're fast enough, you can take a little shortcut in the 4th level. Oh, and the boss? Kinda stupid. If you hit him from the bottom, you can get hit into a spike or fire, or if you're not fast, get hit into the water. You might think, right, you're supposed to hit him 8 times like normal, but no, it's just an obstacle course. So think, most players are gonna try to hit him and just keep getting hit from knockback, or get into the water, which makes it twice as hard. The spear motherfuckers are trouble enough. Oh yeah, and if you get hit just right, fuck you. No air, and likely no rings, and you're slow, so time to get hit by fire you would have avoided otherwise. This zone is a mess, a nightmare for most players. So let's move on to something a little better. Scrap Brain Zone is the second worst. Act 3 goes back to Labyrinth Zone, and it's probably the worst Labyrinth Zone in my eyes. So it's already off to a bad start. Seeing as how this is basically the final area, aka Robotnik's base, it's understandable that it will at least be somewhat harder than the other zones. So this aspect is eased a little compared to Labyrinth. But still, instant death traps and bullshit traps are a very cheap way to make difficulty. This zone definitely isn't fun at all, and several traps don't feel like it's your fault that you got hit. You basically can describe this zone as constantly getting hit over and over again zone, and hope you get at least one ring to get hit 5 seconds later. But at least it's not underwater, and being the final area, it takes a little bit of the flame off since its difficulty is kind of expected. The rotating circles only used in this zone are actually pretty fun and give you some fast vibes. And if you play some parts well, you can breeze past the enemies, which is a big plus over Labyrinth. While Act 3 is a Labyrinth stage, there are several other areas in Scrap Brain that allow you to use and experiment with speed, like the area below the swinging spikes, along with the rotating circles and enemy-filled areas I mentioned. Hell, you could even consider the teleporters, crushing cylinder section in Act 1, and the conveyor belt saw sections to be sorta speedy, and in line with how Sonic should be since you have to play with your speed and momentum just right. Albeit not the greatest way of doing it, but still, it's better than Labyrinth. And on to Marble Zone. Not to be confused with Marble Garden. After Green Hill, the game decides to slow down a little and get some waiting areas. Marble Zone has a lot of waiting sections and slowness, however it's not 100% of the zone. But hey, just think, Labyrinth Zone was going to be the second zone in the game instead of this. There are some good sections where you move fast, and you can skip several waiting areas with invincibility boxes, which is also really nice. Now, why isn't Scrap Brain in front of Marble? Well, for one, Act 3 is underwater and pure suffering, so you're already down an act versus Marble not having this. Scrap also has insta-death traps, while Marble is more lenient, and the difficulty is lower than Scrap. They switch getting hit for a handful of waiting sections. Sure, you can just jump into the lava and damage boost to the end, well, except for a few areas, that is. There are these lava geysers that boost you up to the next area, and if you miss your shot, you have to go all the way back and wait again. There's a few traps, like this red spring that'll launch you into the lava, or the spiky caterpillars. Oh yeah, this zone introduces these dickwads. I want to bring up this platforming section in Act 3. Nowadays, I can handle this, but I see people fall back down and have to start over, which is what happened to me when I was younger too. Mainly, the things holding the zone back is, again, waiting and a few sections being boring. However, not the whole zone is like this, and you don't have to rely on the ring system to get around as much. And there's many sections where you can breeze by if you get some speed and skill and have some fun with invincibility or breaking blocks. I know the few waiting areas stand out, and I kinda ragged on the zone a little, but overall I feel like it's a funner experience than Scrap Brain. There's a lot more fun and faster sections here if you don't get too impatient. A small plus is the music and aesthetic of the zone looks amazing. I love the background and how the lava looks. The first time around, this zone may feel like a pain. Act 3 probably has the most waiting areas, but I can't stress this enough. After playing again, this zone really isn't as agonizing as Scrap Brain is. There are as many parts in the garbled mess of footage that there was some more areas where I was moving faster and getting hit a lot less than the last two zones, and having a generally pleasant experience despite all the handful of lava rides. It feels really satisfying to clear obstacles and cut the weight down by a lot by just having some balls and going for it. And of course, awareness, and not as many things ready to surprise shank you. However, if you die, it's pretty likely you'll have to do a lava ride again, several times in fact in Act 3 with a checkpoint. So the zone has these vices that can quickly grow and influence and ruin the fun, which is why it's not ranked any higher. I had a hard time deciding what to place here. I asked a few people about their experiences, and yeah, in Spring Yard you do get hit a lot more, and a small handful of waiting sections make a return. So Spring Yard is number 3. Like I mentioned, there is waiting sections which are really boring, but some you can avoid by going a different route, and again it's just a handful. They're literally an elevator ride with no threats whatsoever. Another negative is these giant ass spike balls. Most times if you miss the platform, it's a hit. And I've seen it be a pain to get out of for several people, although you can just jump to the platform. Also, this one insta-death pit section and the boss removing blocks is annoying at times. However, now I get to talk about more positives. First off, this music is a banger. God, I love this music for this zone. Second is the enemies aren't dickishly placed and aren't all that threatening, and the giant ass spike balls are easily avoidable. Hell, if you get your movement right, you can breeze right past them, which transitions us to the zone actually promoting you to get speed and momentum. I know, right? We're so spoiled. So, interesting thing about Sonic 1, Sonic goes faster when you're rolling versus when you're running. Well, guess what? There's sections like this that promote you to use your speed to move on. There's areas where you can run and keep your speed if you play right. Dodging hazards while keeping the speed feels pretty satisfying. Plus there are speed shoe boxes. What? Although running into something because your high speed does kind of knock it down a little in the ranking. Back to these big ass spike balls. When it's safe, you can roll on the half circles and actually play with speed and momentum, although I don't really showcase it. Now the boss can be easy for many, but kinda troublesome for newer / less experienced players. He comes down on you and takes away a block, opening the insta-death pit. Newbies might just fall into the pits or get hit into them. However, once you realize you can just move slightly over and hit him repeatedly, it's not so bad. And sometimes while he's flying above you as well. Overall, Spring Yard is a funner experience than Marble in my eyes. I always look forward to the banger song. The waiting sections are here, but they pose no danger and you don't have to restart the waiting section if you mess up. Being able to really play with your speed, and less getting hit if you're actually aware, no traps, and even some speed shoes if you go the right way. Oh yeah, there's also a top and bottom path most times. It just gives you a better experience. Starlight and Spring Yard were the zones that I had trouble placing. Both are good zones with several speedy sections. However, Starlight has a little more going for it. One pro over Spring Yard I'll say right now is the waiting sections are gone. No more waiting in an elevator ride or slugging through lava areas that you can mess up on. Its difficulty, however, can sometimes be an issue since it comes right before Scrap Brain, the last zone including the final boss. But it being this far into the game excuses some of the difficulty because it's to be expected. Now that's not to say that it doesn't have some bullshit. There are a few spots where you can insta-die, but as long as you're not trying to speedrun your first run through the zone, then the few pits shouldn't be an issue. On to the pros. The zone is actually really fun even with the platforming sections. It feels satisfying to clear some of the platforming challenges, then get rewarded with speed sections. Speaking of speed sections, there's more than Spring Yard. The zone forces you to use your speed to overcome these fans, as well as getting over ramps. And there's parts where you zip through at light speed. There's just a nice balance between speed and difficulty in this zone, being as late into the game as it is, without relying on too much bullshit, water, impatient, or hazards. This level is designed like it belongs in a Sonic game. No long waiting areas, speed to play with, and satisfying challenges when you beat them, as well as multiple paths to choose from. However, there is a few pits which I believe it keeps it barely below the best stage. Yep, Green Hill is number 1. There's a reason they reuse it several times, and games like to have a variation of green and brown hilly loop-de-loop areas. Same for Sonic 2's Emerald Hill Zone. Now I'm sure the main reason this zone or similar style first zones are used so often is that it's instantly recognizable. Most everyone knows this format and level. It's a good starter and beginner level that doesn't throw too many difficult hazards while letting you get a hang of how to play the game. However, its design and pacings are a big factor in why it's so good. And like I said, a good starter level. The Sonic level. First off, I know I like to repeat this, but there are no waiting sections. You can just breeze through the level. And the only kinda sorta bullshit trap is when you get the invincibility here, and you might fall into the pit because you wanna go full power. The zone is definitely extremely fun, especially going through loops, tunnels, and smashing through walls as a ball. The zone gives you multiple paths to choose from, and thinking outside the box or exploring can give you invincibility to really speed up your gameplay and make you feel like a god. Just like the one before the boss, making him even more of a cakewalk. You basically have 3 acts to play with speed and actually feel like you're playing a Sonic game. Speed and fun are big players here. And while Starlight gives you immense satisfaction and Spring Yard is pretty fun, I think Green Hill just strikes a nice balance between every factor, especially being speedy, no bullshit, and fun. Because, well, it has to. It's the first act you're thrown into. If it wasn't a good level, you wouldn't keep playing. And getting back to further levels after dying too much would be even worse. There we go. The Sonic 1 stages ranked from best to worst. Now, what about the special stages in the final zone? They're different levels in the level select and are classified as their own thing. Well, just for fun, I'll throw them in here. Firstly, I'd put the special stages as a whole in between Marble and Scrap Brain. The special stages in this game suck absolute balls. The worst of the classic Sonic special stages. The emeralds are really difficult to get, besides maybe the first one. You have to have 50 rings at the end of the stage, which that in itself is a giant middle finger after Marble Zone, so you only get one chance per act so long as it's not Act 3. And completing them doesn't even do anything! You don't even get Supersonic, or rather just some flowers at the end of the game and Robotnik being mad, which is the true or good ending. The stages themselves, however, are extremely difficult for no reward. It's a maze that rotates and it has bumpers, so it's easy to pick the wrong path or worse yet get forced into the goal, which just kicks you out with no emerald. There's many times where it just fucks you over due to many things like rotation, obstacles, rotation changers, bumpers, and not knowing where to go. It really sucks nearly getting to the emerald and then the stage says, "Nope, haha, biatch." Very infuriating, knowing your work is for nothing. Getting to the emerald means you have to chip away slowly at the diamond things, and surviving long enough to even touch the emerald. By surviving, I mean not getting bullied into the goal circle. These are just pure agony. Would not recommend. Finally, the final zone, aka the final boss. This isn't all that bad, more boring than anything. I'd put it between Spring Yard and Marble. Real quickly, to explain what it is, Robotnik has 4 crushers and 2 randomly come down to try and insta-kill Squish You, one of which has Egghead himself. Then 4 laser beams come down to zap you, also an insta-kill because no rings. And that's it. You just have to jump or roll into the one with Robotnik. The fight itself isn't very hard at all. You have plenty of time to see which pillars are going to come down. I'd say the hardest thing is the lasers, if this is your first time fighting them, that is. You can either go all the way to the right or the center. Sometimes you may have to jump to dodge them in the center though. The fight is more boring and repetitive than anything, so you may just die of impatience. However, beating them does give off a great deal of satisfaction, knowing your adventure is over and you can play something else.